Hey guys, it's Chris at Highline Guitars. You're watching another one of my YouTube guitar building videos. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I hope that by the end of this video, I'll have earned the honor and privilege of your subscription. So what I'm going to talk about in today's video is I'm going to be continuing with redoing the finish on my 6-string multi-scale fan fret guitar. Now in the last episode, I had applied several coats of Crystal-Lak sanding sealer, and that was done to both seal in the dye that I applied, and it will also provide a nice surface for the top coats to adhere to. And of course, the top coat I'll be using is Crystal-Lak's Bright Tone Instrument Finish in Gloss Sheen. So my plan is I'm going to do this differently than how I applied it several videos ago. As a reminder, what I did was I sprayed a total of 11 coats. Maybe it was 12, I can't remember. But instead of spraying a coat, letting it dry, then spraying another coat and letting that dry and continuing, I sprayed all 12 coats in one session. And I did that by flash drying it using a hairdryer. That approach didn't really work the way I had hoped it would. Yes, I was able to get the coats down, all 12 of them, in less than an hour. The problem is the finish wouldn't cure right. And even after letting it sit for 4 weeks, it was still fairly soft. And it just wasn't going to work. So after consulting with Crystal-Lak, I came to the conclusion that what I need to do is to allow more time between each coat. So what I'm going to do is I'll spray a coat, and then I'm going to let it sit for 3 hours. Typically what Crystal-Lak recommends is that you let it sit for between 2 and 4 hours. My shop, my garage, is probably about 85 degrees right now, so it's pretty warm in here. As a result, I think I can get away with spraying a coat, letting it dry for 3 hours, and then I'll spray the next coat. And I'll just keep continuing to do that until I've got about 12 coats applied, which means I can probably get 4 coats in a day. So it's going to take 3 days to fully clear coat the guitar. And then I'll have to let it sit again for another 3 weeks to 4 weeks to let it fully cure so that it will be hard enough to be able to level sand and polish. So let's jump in and get started. Before I start spraying, let me kind of show you my setup here. I've shown this before in other videos, but if you're new to my videos and have never seen this, you're going to probably wonder what exactly I'm using as a spray booth. And what I have here is, this is an Armor Tool workbench. It's on casters with brakes on each wheel. These are incredible workbenches. I'll put a link in the description below if you want to go check one out yourself. But I use this as the basis for my spray booth. And the spray booth is made from this corrugated plastic. I got this at Home Depot in large sheets, which I then use to fabricate the structure here. And what's cool about it is, once I'm done, I can take it off the bench, fold it up, and store it away where it's out of the way. It's nice and portable. It's very lightweight. But in the back here, I have just a simple furnace vent or furnace filter, and it is placed in front of a vent here. And then if we go around the back, I have an 8-inch Vevor vent fan, and that pulls all the overspray and dust particles out of the spray booth, and then I vent it out of my garage, which I just prop open. And this whole setup has worked really well for me. It keeps dust to a minimum, it gets rid of the overspray very efficiently, and works really well in a small garage space. I have 4 different spray guns in my workshop, but when it comes to spraying a clear coat, I really like to use the Earl-X 5500 spray station, because this gun is really designed to spray thicker materials, and I don't like to thin my clear coats. When you thin them, you mess with the chemistry. And I like to leave them at the viscosity that they are naturally in when poured straight out of the container. But to do that, I need to use a gun that has a large enough nozzle and needle to do that. And this gun right now, I think it's a 2.5 millimeter needle and nozzle combination, which works really well for spraying Crystalac Brightone instrument finish because it is thicker. If I was going to use my detail gun, which is what I like to use when I spray paint, I would have to thin the clear coat. And like I said, that can mess with the chemistry so that it doesn't dry and cure with the sort of durability that we need from our clear coats. So what I'm going to do is I am going to pour the Brightone into the canister, and I'm going to pour it through a filter, because it's so often the case with products like this is you can get buildup of the finish kind of caked around the opening, and if any of that falls into the canister and works its way into the gun, it'll cause the clear coat to splatter as I'm applying it. And then after I spray each coat, I will disassemble the gun and thoroughly wash it out in just soapy water. I like to clean out my gun after every coat because I don't want the risk of any finish that's caked up around the nozzle to be deposited onto the surface of the guitar as I'm spraying each clear coat finish. Now, one thing I should also mention, when I was spraying the clear coat finishes a couple of videos ago, I was spraying each coat pretty thick, and that I think contributed to the problem of it not curing properly. But when you spray a water-based polyurethane thick, it can dry with a sort of milky white, it's sort of a milky bluish white haze in the finish. But if you keep the coats thin enough, that doesn't happen. So I'm going to spray each coat a little bit thinner than I did the last time, so I don't run into that problem, and hopefully that will allow for each coat to dry more thoroughly before applying each additional coat. But I need to shake it up, get the contents thoroughly mixed in. If you plan to brush on Crystalac, which you certainly can do, I would recommend that you stir it rather than shake it, because shaking it can fill it with air bubbles, and that can be a real problem when you're brushing. However, since I'm spraying it, that's not going to be an issue. Plus, I'm pouring it through a strainer, which eliminates the air bubbles anyway. Now, as far as the settings are concerned, I'm going to spray against a piece of cardboard to test the spray pattern, because I want to apply an even, consistent coat, but like I said, I don't want to apply too thick. So I can adjust this knob here, which controls how far in the needle goes when I pull the trigger. And that controls how much material is being deposited or atomized and shot out of the gun and onto the guitar body. Okay, so it's been about 3 hours since I applied that first coat, and I'm ready to apply the second one. And the process is exactly the same as what you just saw me do with that first coat. So I'm not going to show the application of every single coat. That's just going to get boring. But what I did want to mention was that I'm not going to be scuff sanding the surface before I apply the next coat. A lot of manufacturers recommend that you do a light scuff sanding in between coats in order to improve adhesion. However, Crystalac Brightone Instrument Finish doesn't need that sort of preparation. Each coat is going to bond perfectly with the previous coat, so it isn't necessary, and that saves a lot of time. Plus, I have found that when you scuff sand a surface and then apply a coat, you can see those scratches telegraphing up through your subsequent coats. So it becomes very difficult to get a really good high quality, high gloss mirror-like shine in the end. So I think it's better just to apply and then let it dry on its own and proceed that way. So I'm going to go ahead and spray that second coat, and I'll just keep going. Well, as so often is the case, plans kind of changed. Originally, what I was going to do was spray each coat about 3 hours apart. And that would mean I could spray 4 coats on Monday, 4 coats on Tuesday, and 4 coats on Wednesday, for a total of 12 coats. However, life gets in the way, and I had other things that I had to do. So I sprayed 4 coats on Monday, and then the guitar sat or hung up from the ceiling all day Tuesday, 24 hours. Then on Wednesday, I sprayed another 4 coats. And again on Thursday, the guitar hung up and rested for another 24 hours. And on Friday, I finished spraying the final 4 coats. Now, in my way of thinking, this might be an advantage because I sprayed the 4 coats, let them dry for 24 hours, which means more of the water has been able to evaporate from those coats. And that way, when I sprayed the next 4 coats, that surface was drier. So I'm thinking that by giving those 2 24-hour rest days in between each of the 4 coat spraying sessions, the clear coat is going to dry and cure, maybe not faster, but I think more thoroughly. So we'll see what happens. So what I need to do now is hang up the guitar and let my top coats cure for a sufficient amount of time that's going to allow me to safely level sand, polish sand, and buff the surface to a high gloss mirror-like shine. Now, in the previous efforts to clear coat this guitar, I allowed it to cure for about a month, which is the time necessary in order to wet sand the surface level. This time around, however, I don't want to wait a month. So instead of wet sanding, I'm going to go back to my tried and true dry sanding technique. However, I've slightly modified my approach from what I've done in the past. So I would encourage you to check out that video, which should be the next episode in this series that I'll post next week. And in the meantime, I'm just going to hang it up and let it cure for the next week. And I hope that you'll be back for that next episode. And in the meantime, I would encourage you to visit eguitarplans.com or my Highland Guitars merch store. There's links down below in the description. And you can purchase plans for building guitars, for making the tools that we use to build guitars, and you can even purchase some cool t-shirts. At any rate, whatever you purchase is going to help support this channel so that I can keep making videos on building guitars and sharing my knowledge with you all. And if you want to keep it simple, you can click the thanks button and leave a tip in whatever amount you think is fair. And at the very least, if you appreciate the video, click the thumbs up button. It's free and it really helps to support my channel. So I hope that you'll be back for future guitar building episodes.